prostrate to the teacher Buddha Shakyamuni, homage to wisdom warrior Manjushri, homage to lineage masters, the profound Dharma, seldom met in countless ages. Now I see, hear, and receive it. May we fully realize Tathagata's true meaning. In order to liberate all sentient beings, please give rise to the supreme and unsurpassed bodhicitta. Next, we will continue our discussion. In fact, there are a number of various different faults that may potentially arise or occur when listening to the teachings of the Dharma, which are also known as the stains of the Dharma vessel. In this section, we are going to discuss the 6 different types of defilements. Now, we will discuss the 6 types of defilements. Among them, we have already talked about the first 3. Arrogance, lack of faith, and not seeking the Dharma. These 3 faults have already been explained. Today, we will begin with the 4th, distraction. The mind becomes distracted by the 6 external objects. This is the root of all deluded appearances in samsara and the source of all suffering. As you all know, it is very common for our minds to become distracted and scattered, often drifting away from the present moment, instead of staying focused toward forms, sounds, smells, tastes, touches, and mental objects, the 6th sense objects. Such mental distraction in our lives is truly the cause of the entire cycle of samsara again and again. Since beginningless time, many sentient beings, why have they remained immersed in the deep abyss of samsara? What is the main reason they cannot liberate themselves? It is because our minds have not attained freedom, and we are constantly attached to the 5 kinds of sensual pleasures in the external world. After becoming attached, we create karma, and after creating karma, we become mired in the swamp of samsara. Therefore, the fundamental root and true origin of all confusion, and in essence all forms of obsession, without exception, is our attachment to things or people. All the various sources of suffering in this world also stem from our craving and attachment. So whether we are listening to the Dharma or practicing it, in our journey we must use various different and effective approaches in order to purify and cleanse our minds thoroughly. In the beginning, no matter what practice we undertake, it is quite difficult at times to observe your mind. Padmasambhava Baba also specifically mentioned this in the 6 Bardoses. When we begin observing our own minds, we feel that not even for a moment does it stop, and we start to feel frustrated. We think, how can someone as inadequate as me really have such an uncontrollable mind? But in reality, that's not the case. Because sentient beings have never observed their own minds for themselves before, when we notice our minds, we realize our own attachments and discursive thoughts are extremely unstable. At that time, we shouldn't become frustrated. Instead, we should continuously apply remedies to all kinds of discursive afflictions. Therefore, for us as sentient beings here, whether we are listening to the Dharma or doing virtuous actions daily, keep your mind focused and don't let it wander to the outside world. If our minds are scattered by external things, it becomes difficult to truly grasp the meaning of the Dharma simultaneously. For example, some people listen to teachings while working or doing other things at the same time. Of course, it's very difficult to truly gain the benefits of the Dharma this way. Because capacity to absorb is limited, our ability to truly take things in, absorb, process, and understand information also has its limits. Generally, when ordinary people do anything with truly full concentration and dedication, the chances of success are much, much higher significantly. Therefore, when we listen to the Dharma in daily life, we should try our best to take care of all other various miscellaneous and potentially trivial matters beforehand and set them aside. Then, during this time, you must listen attentively and with full concentration. You shouldn't let your attention wander to every sound you hear outside. I see something unusual outside, and my eyes slowly and carefully focus on it. Of course, our minds are filled with countless distracting thoughts. If this happens, the true Dharma can never really enter your heart in your life. Therefore, during the time of listening to the Dharma, every practitioner must pay attention. Because during the time you are listening to the Dharma, everything should be completely devoted to that. Since that's the case, there's no need for you to add anything extra to it. We're not people who can kill 2 birds with 1 stone, like those with great spiritual capacity or truly exceptional wisdom. Some people say, I can do other things while listening to the Dharma. This is my strength, this is my ability. But this is very difficult. Indeed, when you really want to focus and do something, an ordinary person has only one discriminating thought. When your mind is focused on that, at that moment about other things, if you had two minds, then maybe you could do it. But according to Buddhist logic, this is not possible. For non-discriminating consciousness, things are established. For discriminating consciousness, a sentient being has only one mind. You could say that when your one mind is focused on something else, like truly attractive sights, wonderfully pleasant sounds, or incredibly delicious tastes, it's impossible for another mind to listen and receive teachings at the same time. Therefore, during the process of listening to the Dharma, you have only one mind. That one mind must really be focused at that time. I've noticed when we listen to the Dharma, after all, the teacher is here giving teachings, and during the teaching, except for a very small amount of time, most of the time we are focused on the meaning of the Dharma. This is something that many people can easily do. But when you are meditating, or when you are practicing analytical meditation on a method, it's very easy for your mind to start scattering toward external objects. Or you get caught up in discursive thoughts, thinking about things from the past or future. This kind of situation happens easily. When practicing intensely, we should also maintain mindfulness and awareness. When we listen to the Dharma, we must pay attention to our posture and make a conscious effort to prevent our six sense sight, hearing, smell, taste, touch, and the mind from becoming involved with or reacting to any external objects or distractions that may appear around us. Because when you are listening to the Dharma, for example, some people listen to Dharma teachings on MP3 while your eyes are carefully watching TV. I think this is impossible. You want your ears to receive the transmission of the Dharma while your eyes are taking in images from worldly television programs. I've seen some lay practitioners in the world who want to do this well, but in reality, I'm afraid it's very unlikely that they can actually do it perfectly. So we suggest that when listening to the Dharma, you should try to finish all your miscellaneous tasks beforehand and make sure to set aside time to listen with complete focus. At that time, it's best not to have any disturbances or unnecessary distractions from others. None of these should be present. Only then will your Dharma practice be truly complete. Whether in terms of transmission or understanding, you will gain genuine benefit from the Dharma, as clearly explained here. When we are listening to the Dharma or practicing, if our mind is scattered and distracted by external objects, there are many faults. Here, this simply refers to the five sense consciousnesses being attached to external phenomena. This is not strict at all from the perspective of Buddhist logic. If we speak according to Buddhist logic, five sense consciousnesses, eye, ear, nose, tongue, and body lack discrimination or attachment. It is possible that discriminating thoughts arise from five sense consciousnesses, but it is not being divided in such detail. In everyday life, from a worldly perspective, there is this kind of saying. For example, my eye consciousness is attached to beautiful sights outside, and my ear consciousness is attached to pleasant sounds. There is a saying, so from a worldly perspective, without particularly detailed analysis, it is established in this way. What faults arise when our five sense consciousnesses become attached to external objects? This point is explained and will show by analogies. For example, because the eye consciousness is attached to visual forms, it leads moths to fly into flames, resulting in their own destruction. From the view of eye consciousness, since sentient beings' eyes, it perceives some truly beautiful and attractive sights from the outside world. As a result, a sense of attachment gradually arises within the mind, and this in turn gives rise to a strong feeling of desire. When we see especially attractive objects, we become attached. After becoming attached, we fall into samsara ourselves and can't reach liberation. Countless sentient beings, because they are especially fond of beautiful and attractive things, in the end, after dying in this life, they do not take rebirth in a fortunate realm, but are instead reborn as animals, becoming moths. As for moths, at night, they see the light as really very beautiful. Because of this, they desperately fly toward the light, ultimately bringing about their own destruction. Of course, nowadays, some scientific explanations and their theories say that, like celestial navigation, there is an instinct involved. This is one explanation. Some say that moths have a kind of phototaxis, an ability to be drawn to light. But all these explanations are because and don't understand habitual tendencies from before. In this life, those who are especially attached to physical beauty, who are particularly lustful, such people are absolutely certain, without any doubt, to be reborn in that realm in their next life. Once a Khenpo in a city, he taught the scriptures and Dharma to them. He advised them not to be overly fond of dressing up, as otherwise they would eventually become like moths. It is said that after this Khenpo finished his talk, a group of beautiful, graceful, and elegant women no longer dare to dress up anymore at all. Indeed, in our world, people are always thinking about looking attractive every day, and this kind of persistent greed in the heart just continues to grow. This phenomenon, as we have observed, will also quite certainly appear again in future lives. Because of the ear consciousness's attachment to sounds, wild animals end up dying under the hunter's gun. Sometimes people in the world can become obsessed with very pleasant, soothing sounds that come from the outside. The devastating disasters caused by this are also, in many ways, truly endless. As mentioned earlier, wild animals such as musk deer and deer, they too become deeply obsessed with and especially fond of the beautiful sound of the peeper. Even when poisoned arrows are shot into their bodies from the side, they remain unaware. In the end, they ultimately die under the hunter's gun. The very same principle, in fact, still applies. When we listen to the Dharma or practice, we should try our best to ignore these external distractions. When we hear sounds, in reality, they are actually just stimulating our sense of hearing. There is no real meaning to them. However, some beings have such habits that are frightening. Sometimes this can be because these habits were particularly strong in past lives. If you do not obtain a human body for yourself, it is likely that you will be reborn as an animal obsessed with these instruments and this music. Sometimes when we see cockroaches or mice near musical instruments, they might have been very famous singers in their past lives. They didn't obtain a human body, and they may be guarding these instruments. I mentioned a famous Khumbu monastery master, Jamyang Shapa. Once he went to perform a liberation ritual for a very famous singer. He patiently recited the transference of consciousness ritual for a very long time, from morning until night. But in the end, it seemed that the master's expression was not very good. Later in the afternoon, he sang some beautiful songs for quite a long time. After finishing the songs, he recited the transference ritual and dedicated the merit. At that time, everyone was very puzzled. They wondered why the master had suddenly stopped the liberation ritual partway through today and even sang such worldly songs. Why was that? Later, when disciples asked the master about the situation, the master said, I used clairvoyance to observe the situation. This deceased person was very pitiable. In her lifetime, she was especially attached to singing. Her intermediate state body, her soul, was still deeply obsessed with listening to others sing. How can I use Buddhism to summon her soul? She wouldn't return. In the end, I had no choice but to use singing. Because they said Jamyang Shapa Rinpoche's voice was also very pleasant. After he sang, her intermediate state consciousness, in fact, gradually became, over time, increasingly interested in him. At that moment, the master said, I merge my own mind with the consciousness of the intermediate state body as one. After reciting the transference practice, liberation can be achieved. So during one's lifetime, at some point, sometimes, as I have mentioned before, some people are fond of listening to songs and music. If there are no other conditions whatsoever, it seems not now, but there used to be a Vajra friend below every day at noon while he was stir-frying cabbage. He would have an old broken radio playing there, always listening to it. I felt like maybe he had some special sense of hearing. The sound that came out was actually quite jarring to the ears, not pleasant at all, but he seemed to really enjoy it. Every single time. At noon, he would combine delicious food with what he thought was beautiful music. It might be good for his health. This just shows that every sentient being has different thoughts and inclinations. However, especially when we are listening to or practicing the Dharma, some music or instruments really seem unnecessary. But nowadays, some people in the world also say, during a lecture, play soft background music. It creates a sense of joy and happiness in your heart, but it shouldn't be too loud. Some people even say there should be background music during lectures. There should be a little bit of guzheng music, perhaps some, for example. There are many opinions like this, but these, when your mind is truly focused and captivated by the Dharma, you don't really need all sorts of worldly music. Therefore, these ideas are not necessarily reasonable. Now, as we talk about sound, we can also say that being attached to music has its drawbacks. Because the sense of smell is attached to fragrance, bees end up entangled and die among the flowers. Sometimes people in the world are like this too. In fact, the sense of smell also becomes attached to distinctive, evocative, memorable, and pleasant scents, as well as to delightful and inviting fragrances. As a result, in fact, this actually leads to significant and considerable faults. Nowadays, many people especially love pleasant smells. They go to great lengths, applying all kinds of perfume to themselves. Sometimes, when people walk by, it can be surprising. On the street, you can't help but stop and look back, because a wave of fragrance comes wafting over. At that moment, it feels truly quite extraordinary. Yesterday, a Dharma friend from overseas said to me, "Master, I'm sorry, I sprayed some perfume on myself." I said, if it's actually perfume, then there's really no need to apologize at all, unless he should truly be thanked. But I actually really like it very much, spraying perfume on yourself or your clothes. Some people around you might find it very pleasant. Some people may not be. So these are just like industrious bees, which are especially and naturally fond of pleasant scents and fragrances, as everyone surely knows, as is widely recognized indeed, and end up entangled and dying among the flowers. When we discussed the dance of the lotus garden, we already discussed Dayang and Ening, as we mentioned previously in our earlier conversation. In the end, Anning died entangled among the flower petals. Dayang was known as the radiant and illustrious golden bee, while Anning, on the other hand, was regarded as the exquisite and beautiful jade bee. Khenpo Jigme Phuntsok recounted the love story between two bees. It was made into a very fine drama, which also thoughtfully expounded the Dharma within it. I remember His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok also taught the preliminary practices mentioned in it. At that time, His Holiness had already finished teaching the entire heart essence of the Guru. It should have been on April 16th, 2001, when he had completed the teachings. The Master dreamed. He said that in the dream, he saw Mipham Rinpoche. Then Mipham Rinpoche told him, "You should have now finished teaching the heart essence of the Guru. Now teach the words of my perfect teacher, the preliminary practices of Dzogchen." His Holiness said, "Such a vast treatise, and my health is not good at the moment." At that time, due to various external factors, the circumstances were not very favorable. Under such conditions, would I be able to teach it completely? Later, His Holiness asked once more, "Can I teach the path of liberation revealed, or the preliminary practices from the dance of the lotus garden?" Mipham Rinpoche agreed. After agreeing to the request, His Holiness then made a solemn vow to teach it 100,000 times. Next Master said 100,000 times. I may not be able to complete it in this rather brief lifetime. I sincerely ask all the respected Khenpos and all the Dharma teachers present here today, each of you, if you would be so kind, should please teach it. If there are perhaps 100,000 people who truly listen, then my vow indeed should be fulfilled. Later, we also taught it once in class. The teaching notes may be in the Treasury of Sublime Dharma. I don't remember very clearly. So later on, His Holiness Rinpoche truly did indeed the Sutra of the Wise and Foolish and the Words of my perfect teacher. I often think about this from time to time. Mipham Rinpoche used his wisdom-emanated body with great compassion to guide His Holiness. When the teaching of the Guru's heart essence was finally completed, requested Great Perfection Preliminary Practice Guide. This preliminary practice guide is a profound teaching bestowed by the lineage masters. It is an extremely profound instruction that has been left to us. When we observe from many causes and conditions Later generations rely on the Great Perfection Preliminaries and have truly, really gained tremendous benefit from it. There must be auspicious connection. Because at that time, the precious guru in 1997 vowed to follow a 4-year plan. In the first year, he taught the Sutra of the 100 Deeds. In the second year, the way of the bodhisattva. In the third year, he explained Tantra, the great illusory net. And in the fourth year, he taught the Guru's hard essence. After completing the full 4-year cycle, he later taught the Sutra of Wise and Foolish and the Great Perfection Preliminary Practices. It was truly, absolutely quite complete. I often, sometimes, when sitting alone in my room, reflect on the precious Guru's entire life, especially many of his profound teachings from his later years. For us, these have been an extremely auspicious connection. I sincerely hope that this time, all of you, my dear Dharma friends, will take it very seriously and approach it with utmost dedication, because your commitment truly matters, so please do your best. At the same time, I made a vow. I vowed to teach it either 1,000 times or 10,000 times. This time, I should definitely be able to fulfill it with confidence. I haven't taught it 1,000 times. But if each of you listens, then each of you has heard it once in your own ears. So to say that I haven't taught it would be impossible. If we reason from the perspective of logic, if we understand it mainly from the perspective of your sense of hearing, then it has definitely been more than 1,000 or even 10,000 times. I spoke on Dance of Lotus Garden. The Dance of the Lotus Garden actually contains many truly extraordinary teachings. It also tells some interesting and poignant stories, such as about bees unfortunately getting trapped and eventually dying inside the structure itself. Then it talks about the tongue consciousness, because the tongue is obsessed with truly delicious food. The fish is eventually caught on the iron hook, because sentient beings, some are especially attached to certain tastes, like a meal of incredibly delicious dishes prepared with care. And nowadays, people in the world are obsessed with mountain and sea delicacies. Actually, in the end, the reason fish really get caught on hooks is because they are greedy. Now, in cities, many people are especially attached to food. When they go to restaurants, this and that are tasty. When they see any sentient being, they think, this might be tasty. Everything they look at is about how fresh it is, how delicious it is. Being so attached like this, the karmic consequences are truly frightening. In the end, we ourselves might also become fish and then end up in someone else's mouth. Because when we were human, back then, in those days, we consumed quite a lot of aquatic animals or some land animals, for example. In this way, as a result of our actions and the cycle of life and death, when we are reborn in our next existence, we ultimately find ourselves transformed into the food. This is an emotional attachment, a deep connection to food. Even while listening to the Dharma or practicing it, we should not be attached. This is the meaning. Because of the body's persistent attachment to physical tactile sensations and feelings, the elephant, as a result, becomes thoroughly stuck in the mud. Our bodysome people especially like softer, more comfortable, or particularly pleasant and soothing tactile sensations that feel especially delightful. In this way, just like when the weather is especially hot for elephants, they want to bring a little bit of gentle comfort to their bodies, so they end up running straight into the thick, sticky mud, and in the end they get completely stuck there and eventually die there, unable to escape. People nowadays also think every day about how good their clothes are, getting massages, how comfortable their bodies are, including, as of right now, the famous black mud baths, bathing with rich black mud on the body, how it actually feels, and so on. In Sichuan, there are even advertisements on public. A lot of people's bodies are all like this. In our Tibetan region, black mud baths are free. There's plenty of mud. Nowadays, as long as the advertisement is successful, people think it's great. As long as your body feels comfortable and pleasant to the touch, people really do pay a lot of attention to this particular aspect. If you see it, sentient beings are pitiable. If you don't create karma, you need some physical softness and comfort, it's actually not that big of a deal. But in this process, just you might end up creating karma related to attachment and desire for the opposite sex, or all sorts of different types of other karma, which can be incredibly frightening. So if you become attached, even this kind of physical contact can create karma. Also, in the Treasury Pith instructions, it says, when the mind becomes thoroughly deluded and confused by the many phenomena it encounters, it is, in a sense, very much like the deep suffering experienced by a camel that has lost its beloved calf. For example, if your mind is attached whether to men and women or even to material wealth, then in your next life you will also unfortunately lose or be separated from many of the things that you truly love the most. Just like when a camel loses its calf, he becomes especially attached, constantly longing for it, suffering deeply. For objects of attachment, the harm they actually bring us is really, truly significant and terrifying. Therefore, as we consider with regard to specifically the objects of the six consciousnesses, namely the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind, we should really try our best to let go and not become overly attached. Whenever you become attached, you should recognize, oh, I can't be overly attached. Now, otherwise, this will become a particularly frightening cause for falling into the lower realms. In our minds, we should maintain mindfulness and clear awareness. There was once a professor who, during a lecture, said that in Han Buddhism, many monastics wear straw sandals. When wearing those sandals, the 5 front toes are exposed and the heel is also exposed. This, she said, symbolizes cutting off the 6 sense objects. If that's the case, then for many young women in India, plus the front and back, basically their entire feet are exposed in the middle. Maybe that's a symbol of cutting off all external objects, if in the scriptures, not sure. I can't really say that I have a particularly authoritative or comprehensive understanding of Han Buddhism, and I'm not particularly sure whether their explanation is really like that either. Many people in China now have this view, no matter what it indeed is. Monastics must definitely cut off attachment to forms, sounds, smells, and tastes. As beings in the desire realm, we really should not be attached to anything at all. For example, not wanting to eat when it's mealtime or completely abandoning external objects. Before reaching enlightenment, it's quite difficult. But at the very least, when we are practicing or attending teachings, we really shouldn't be so attached to the 5 sense objects, such as sight, sounds, smells, tastes, and touches, while also seeking the Dharma. That's just not realistic at all. When we listening to lectures, we should set aside all worldly desires and sensory distractions. Once you've set them aside, you can focus wholeheartedly on the teachings. This way, the results will be very good. So everyone must definitely pay attention to this. In addition, whether you are listening to the Dharma, teaching, or practicing, you need to cut off reminiscing about the past and fantasizing about the future, while as present discriminating thoughts and distractions toward external objects. In the most serious cases, whether we are practicing, teaching, or listening to the Dharma in any way, during any of these processes, we should not let all kinds of past experiences, memories, or events surface in our minds naturally, nor let greed, anger, ignorance, and discriminating thoughts disturb our mental continuum. We shouldn't plan many things for the future. This is the discriminating thoughts of 3 times, the 3 times discriminating thoughts. Eliminate discriminative thoughts of past, present, and future when listening to Dharma. It's easier to eliminate them when transmitting the Dharma. Because when you are transmitting the Dharma, if your mind is not focused on the Dharma teachings you are conveying, you're thinking of past or future. Unless you are citing stories or your own experiences, it's not easy to come up with such thoughts. And even if you do, you might not be able to express them verbally. When listening to the Dharma, pay attention. If you don't do this, there is a saying in Tibetan that goes, the body is in the monastery, but the mind remains in the busy city. This is also used as a satirical remark about some fake monks, because although a person may be in the monastery listening to teachings in assembly hall, their mind might wander off to the city, perhaps filled with memories or dreams just for a moment, as if lost in thought. Engaging in improper activities is possible. While we are listening to the Dharma, at the same time, we're also thinking, what will I do in the future, this and that? Our minds often start making all sorts of plans,
This has a very big impact on your ability to listen to the Dharma. After we finish teaching the preliminary practices of Dzogchen, few men practice. When everyone is asked to practice, some people whose practice is relatively weak can't even keep their minds focused for a few minutes. One distracting thought arises, then another. They end up feeling very disappointed in themselves. If you used to practice regularly, it wouldn't be so difficult, because this practice we're doing isn't entirely about resting the mind in calm, abiding meditation either. If it were calm, abiding meditation, subtle thoughts would still be harmful to you. We are now practicing the method of observation. For example, analytical meditation. If you're practicing how precious life is, you need to keep thinking about it. Whenever discursive thoughts arise, use mindfulness to bring your mind back to the state of mind you're using for this contemplation. This is not difficult, but if you've never really observed your own mind before, even for just a moment, at any point in your life, then it's very difficult. It's like children who have never been to school. They're extremely mischievous, running around on their own, free, no one can control them. If he is currently in school and have truly received some guidance from teachers, they're not like that. Even if they get a little mischievous, they can quickly become quite obedient. In the same way, our minds really do, in fact, need to be trained. If you haven't practiced at the very beginning your discursive thoughts, I am so disappointed that I can't stop even for a few minutes, let alone for long, like a day or even months or years. That's simply out of the question. That's why many people, when they haven't practiced, find their minds quite frightening. Some people at that stage say, cultivation's too hard. I've been practicing for a month and my mind still hasn't settled down. Indeed, it's not that easy. Since beginningless time, our thoughts have been like a wild elephant. If they could settle down in just a day or two, how easy would that be? But in reality, it's not like that at all. That's why we really try every possible way in order to practice as much as we can. Next, it said, whenever we practice Dharma, avoid thinking of the past, future, or 3 times. But if you really do have them, we should try to redirect those thoughts towards something virtuous. Asanga said, the joys and sorrows once felt are like ripple snow gone without a trace, so do not dwell on them. If thoughts arise, reflect on the rise and fall, the coming together and parting. Outside of Dharma, what else is there to rely on, Maniwa? Bodhisattva Asanga said that our past experiences, pain and happiness, all of these have already passed, just like ripples on water. Once they have appeared, they leave absolutely no trace behind, and then almost instantly they simply vanish without a sound. There's really no need for you to keep constantly thinking and worrying about it, about your past. Some monastics talk about pasts. How do I fall in love? How do I fight? They tell others about these things, but it's really unreasonable. Some lay people are always talking about how things were in the past. Nowadays, people especially like to bring up their pasts. Posing, I started to cry. They feel sad and happy at the same time, almost as if they've gone mad. But no need for this. It's just like ripples on water. Before yesterday, just as Longchen Rabjam said, everything's already passed. There's no need to dwell on these things. It's all vanished without a trace. There's no need. If you really must think about something, if you insist on having discriminating thoughts, if you simply can't help but think about the past, then you should focus on virtuous things. Think about how in the past, when people gathered together, where have they all ended up now? Those once wealthy have now become beggars and the like. Those who used to have nothing to eat or wear, those who were extremely poor, have now become so very wealthy indeed. These cycles of rise and fall, when our family used to be together, what things were like back then, now everything has scattered and dispersed. You can reflect on the entire concept of impermanence. Thinking in this way genuinely and sincerely brings great benefit to your practice on a daily basis. So after contemplating in this way, you come to realize that apart from the Dharma, nothing trustworthy, nothing reliable. As it is stated in the King of Teachings Sutra, for those who are dying, so-called Dharma is... They are always there, offering comfort and safety to those in need, serving as both a trusted refuge and a reliable protector. So apart from the Dharma, there is truly nothing else at all. Here, Maniwa refers to Asanga Bodhisattva at that time. Asanga Bodhisattva is the author of the 37 Practices of a Bodhisattva in Tibetan. I have translated his biography, studying Bodhikariyavatara. I also introduced some things about him. He said that some local villages were called Maniwa, This was a teaching he gave to the people of Maniwa. It's just like how we now say northerners or southerners. It's a kind of colloquial expression. So at that time, he actually said, there is no need to dwell on everything from the past. Whether we are practicing or listening to Dharma, we think about the past. Some people are always attached to them, but this is truly unnecessary. About the past, it's best not to talk. No point talking. If you really must talk about them, you should combine it with the contemplation of impermanence. It will mean something for your practice. You will feel that apart from the Dharma, nowhere else, there is nothing truly trustworthy, nothing reliable. This refers to our discriminating thoughts about the past, which we should not cling to. For future livelihood, it's like casting a net on dry land, let go of hopes that can't be realized. If you reflect on the uncertainty of the time of death, how could you possibly engage in unwholesome actions or empty pursuits? When it comes to the future, various plans and schemes, constantly thinking about various different arrangements, these are also truly, absolutely, and completely unnecessary. It's like someone casting a net in a completely dry place, waiting there, expecting a lot of fish to appear, and when the fish show up, catching them all in one net, getting them all into your hands all together, and then having a delicious feast. This is extremely unrealistic, a pipe dream, impossible to achieve. So nowadays, well, many people, whether it's unrealistic hopes and longing, or perhaps a deep and persistent desire for the future, for what is yet to come, waiting just beyond our reach, all of these are, in fact, truly and quite unnecessary hopes that simply cannot be realized. In Tibet, we have a saying, around every hope, despair is always quietly and silently lurking in the ever-present shadows, always. This is true. This is actually quite true. For example, we hope to get rich or hope to become something else. But you have no idea that there is truly and undeniably a great deal of despair surrounding it. Sometimes it's like this. This year, I should do this or that. Last year, many business people thought, I'm definitely going to make a fortune playing the stock market, investing in real estate. How much money did I actually have at that time back then exactly? But they never expected a global financial crisis or all kinds of potential threats would reach their territory. In the end, everything just gradually turns into nothing more than a dream. His dream is shattered. This situation happens often. So all those beautiful dreams about the future that are impossible to realize are unnecessary. If you really must think about things in the future, then you should consider the uncertainty of the time of death. We and all beings will die. What will it be like when you die? You need to reflect on the impermanence and the uncertainty of the time of death. At this point, we will realize that there is never time to engage in unwholesome actions, nor is there ever really any space for it. People who recite mani mantras should understand this. Oh, if I contemplate impermanence, then how can I just carelessly let my mind wander or be negligent now? Where is the time to do unwholesome actions like this? In a brief human life, when will I have to leave this world? You will definitely feel a strong sense of urgency within yourself. This is the conceptual thought regarding the future. Our thoughts are like this. Temporary trivial matters are like making a living in a dream. Diligently pursuing them is meaningless, so they should be abandoned. Even when eating in accordance with the Dharma, one should seal it with non-attachment. All actions and deeds are meaningless, O mani reciters. For now, all sorts of trivial matters, both big and small, in our present life, we should not become too overly attached to them. We see them as illusions appearing, but not real. If you put in a lot of effort, in reality, at the end of the day, it really has no true significance. Therefore, you should let go of some of your attachments, for example, whether it's eating, walking, or talking right now, as well as sleeping and all sorts of other actions. You shouldn't be overly attached or fixated. If you are, it'll give rise to afflictions. Many people nowadays don't understand the illusory nature of things, so they see everything as especially real and substantial. Once you become attached, you create all kinds of karma. That's why, including actions like eating and many others, approach them without greed or attachment, see emptiness. Use these perspectives to imprint upon your mind. Only then will you understand that all worldly actions and deeds have no real meaning. only practicing the Dharma has true meaning. Apart from that, some non-dharmic actions and negative karma that is especially harmful to your future lives should be abandoned even more. You should really understand this important principle. Subdued discursive thoughts of 3 poisons. The 3 poisons may also mean 3 times. I saw, as I was reading commentary on the Preliminaries that was written by Lama Yike, it says the 3 times, which is a bit easier to explain because it summarizes the previous one, which is the future, past, and present. But in the Tibetan language, it's actually just a difference that appears in a suffix rather than a change in the main part of the word. Afterward, subdue the discursive thoughts of the 3 times, before all objects of thought arise and before the Dhammakaya manifests. When it is not a time for deliberate thinking, you should be mindful and not let your mind wander in distraction. From the above reasoning and careful consideration of all the points discussed, we can confidently and conclusively conclude that we must, without any doubt, definitely subdue all discursive thoughts related to the future, past, and present. This is important for practice. First, you should not dwell on things that happened in the past. When listening or practicing, don't think about them. When you think about it, tell yourself don't think about it. There's no need why think about the past. And don't think about the present either. What am I doing right now? What should I do now? Otherwise, you won't even be able to sleep at night. Many discursive thoughts in the present moment only disturb us needlessly. And don't think about the future. If you must think about it, act well only, else don't. But for many of us ordinary people, when it comes to planning and arranging virtuous deeds for the future, this is very rare. Many of them are illegal. So discursive thoughts about past, present, and future, if you keep letting them become objects of your memory before reality's true nature has manifested, after realization, objects of discursive thought become the spontaneous play of the Dharma Dhatu. But before you reach that level, it's best not to think about them. It is best to recall certain memories or thoughts only when it is absolutely necessary to do so. By limiting the times you bring these memories to mind, you can help yourself stay focused on what is important in the present. Unnecessarily thinking about past events can distract you and make it harder to concentrate. Therefore, earlier we talked about subduing discursive thoughts of the 3 times. Before all appearances have manifested as the Dharmakaya, when you must think, it means this antidote method is always truly indispensable and cannot be abandoned. For ordinary people, if we let go of this, our practice cannot succeed. So by all means, do not let your wild thoughts scatter, absolutely not, toward external objects. If you are practicing or listening to the Dharma, you will not succeed. Additionally, there's also such a teaching or perhaps a lesson that is worth mentioning here. Don't fantasize about the future. If you fantasize about the future, it would be like the moon calling you father. Do not fantasize about the future. If you do, you're no different from Chandrakirti's father. Here, the Chandrakirti mentioned is not the author of the Entering the Middle Way treatise, but a famous person, because this story, which takes place in the region of Tibetan, can be said to be well known in every household. Everyone knows it. It is also a story with a satirical meaning aimed at practitioners. So this story is, once upon a time, there lived a man who was very poor and struggled each day to get by. One day, to his great surprise and relief, he managed to obtain a lot of barley. With great care, he carefully put all the freshly harvested golden barley into a large, sturdy sack, and at night he hung it above himself. He lay alone beneath the heavy sack of barley, because usually, in most cases when storing barley, it's 100 or 200 jin, very large and very plentiful. Generally, it might, for example, be carefully and securely stored in a cowhide sack like this, traditionally. Then he was afraid, just like some people today, afraid rice or grains would be eaten by mice. So he also hung it above. You all shouldn't sleep underneath it either, otherwise it's very dangerous. He might have been the same, and then he couldn't help but think to himself. He kept thinking to himself, pondering deeply, now that he could finally use this valuable barley as his starting capital for future plans and opportunities. Surely he would end up with a great deal of wealth. Now, with this large and heavy sack of barley as his starting capital, he was certain that from now on, he would be rich. By that time, he thought he would marry a very good wife. Then surely they would have an adorable child. He was certain of it, truly, without a doubt. At that time, he would most certainly have to name the child naming the child would be his responsibility. This is what he thought. He would choose a very good name, and the child would be very cute as well. So what kind of name should he choose? Just then, the moon rose over the eastern hills. He thought, this is a wonderful omen, a wonderful omen. So he decided to simply name the child Moonbana, he thought for a moment, and then said, Moonbana, because in Tibetan, well, maybe this was a Tibetan person, but perhaps he was Indiana, one really knows, because in India they also like the name Banner, like Moon Banner, Dharma Banner. There are many with Banner in their names. He was on the verge of finally naming the child Moon Banner when, at that very moment, just as he was about to speak with anticipation, the string holding up the hanging bag was bitten through by a mouse. The bag happened to fall right on top of him. He was right underneath it. He left this world, breathed his last toe, very pitiful. In fact, while he was still completely lost in his own vivid and elaborate fantasies, just quietly thinking about it all in his mind, he simply left this world. Also, I've mentioned that there are slightly different versions of this story. There are also different versions among the people saying that Moonbanner's father, he also got a lot of barley, and he was extremely happy. He didn't have a house. So he carried this huge bag of barley all by himself, climbing over mountains and hills. One night, he stayed on top of a mountain. When he was on the mountaintop, he was especially happy and delighted. Now, I've managed to get so much barley. That night, he slept peacefully right next to it. Or you could say that he gently placed the bag of barley right there, down by his feet. Actually, the remote and isolated mountain where he stayed was quite steep and treacherous, and at night he kept quietly thinking to himself, wondering, the rest of the story is basically the same as before. He kept thinking, now that I have barley, I can get married, then have children, so what should I possibly name this child? While he was thinking about this, he suddenly thought, maybe I should name him Yue Cheng, moon name. Then he said aloud, I want to name this child Yue Cheng. Just at that moment, the bright, full, silvery moon slowly began to rise from behind the eastern mountain. The moonlight happened to softly and gently shine right on him. He was very happy. Look, just as I was thinking about Yue Cheng, the moonlight appeared too. That must mean everything will turn out successfully. Then he stretched out his leg at once and accidentally pushed the original bag of barley into the lake below. He was extremely heartbroken. In the end, in despair, he jumped into the lake himself and died as well. Yue Cheng never came to the human world, and the father had already left. There is also such a saying. I have talked about this story before. In the Han region, there's also a beautiful place in Jiangnan where there was a homeless man who appeared to be also a beggar. He begged everywhere he could and lived in great misery. Later, when he was crossing the river, he used all the money he had to purchase a lottery ticket. Then he thought to himself, if I win the lottery, what should I do? He thinks in his heart, there are also different versions among the people saying that Moonbanner's father, then I'll stay in a 5-star hotel, and so on. These were his thoughts. Later, it turned out that his lottery ticket had indeed won, just as everyone hoped. He was extremely, extremely happy. He thought, my dream has finally come true. He was overjoyed as a beggar. He used to carry a dog-beating stick, a stick beggars used to fend off dogs. Then, as for the lottery ticket he had, because all his clothes were tattered, full of holes, no place to keep things, he had tucked it into a crack in his dog-beating stick. He put it there and forgot it. Later, when he heard he had won the prize, he was overjoyed happily. Then he went to a bridge, and on that bridge he was so happy that he shouted loudly, from now on, from this very moment, I will without hesitation throw away all the tools that belong to a beggar. Then he took that old, well-known dog-beating stick, and with all his might he threw it very far, far away into the rushing, swirling, and endlessly surging river. He realized the lottery ticket was still inside. He got upset. He himself, without hesitation, jumped into the river as well. He left this world too. In fact, there's such a version of the story. Actually, there are quite a few such cases. As practitioners, it is acceptable for us to make some plans regarding our future Dharma practice. Really aren't particularly necessary in most cases. Sometimes, just as I mentioned earlier, behind hope, there is often a lot of despair. Plans can't keep up with changes. Things can change very quickly. The beautiful, precious dreams you once had can be completely shattered in no time. You feel extremely heartbroken. Nowadays, many people often think, how can I make money immediately right now? After making money, how should I really buy a house? And how should I buy a car? At that time, all sorts of issues start to arise. When these things haven't happened yet, in fact, some families already start arguing. Stories like this also exist in Tibetan. Once upon a time, there was a loving, caring, and close-knit family with a very, very adorable, sweet, and delightful child. The child was rather mischievous. The husband had a lot of fantasies. He said, right now, I'm trying to figure things out. Even though our family is very poor, I'll find a way to earn some money somehow. So after I make some money, I really do plan to eventually marry a female horse. That's a horse, you know. By that time, she will most certainly indeed give birth to an absolutely adorable and very cute little foal. At that particular point in time, he told the child in a gentle voice, when we have a foal, you can't harm it. You're especially mischievous, so you can't hurt it. At that moment, the child said, no, when the right time finally does come, I really do want to ride the foal, honestly. The father was unhappy. Didn't I just say you can't harm it? Then he hit the small child with a heavy wooden stick with considerable force, and as a result, the child died instantly, right there on the spot. It was truly a senseless tragedy. So, in this world, there really are, indeed, many unrealistic things. This thing cannot succeed. People argue and blame each other in situations like this. As a professional practitioner, there are many unrealistic or improbable things in the future, thoughts that are absolutely impossible to realistry to think about them as little as you can. We should focus on the present moment, rely on the Dharma now and practice according to the teachings. Only by truly and sincerely doing this will your Dharma practice be complete and ultimately successful. Otherwise, some people may have wonderful ideas, but when it comes to virtuous deeds, that's acceptable. There was once a monk who often thought, in the future I will become a great Dharma master, I'll build temple. But this temple must be in a rather remote place to the east, in a location with good terrain. I definitely want to build it in such a place. The Mahavira Hall was constructed specifically, and the glazed tiles on the Mahavira Hall were arranged specifically. Sometimes when you hear it, it sounds ridiculous. But letting him enjoy this kind of life, it is possible and free. So sometimes we really don't need to dwell on thoughts of the future, as they may not be realistic and are unnecessary. As for many things in the past, unwholesome experiences we've had, there's no need to talk about them with others, nor is there any need to think about them ourselves. When practicing the Dharma, the present moment of discrimination should be transformed into a path and used for virtuous actions. This is crucial. When we listen to the Dharma, we should mindfully and attentively use our mind in the present moment to turn towards virtuous actions. In daily life, as the great masters and teachers of the past have said, we should observe our own minds. When our minds are continuously flooded with discriminating and deluded thoughts, we should use right awareness and right mindfulness to subdue them. In this way, your practice will also in the end be truly successful. The same applies when listening to the Dharma. His Holiness said this before. As practitioners, it is acceptable for us to make some plans regarding our future Dharma practice. For example, after I finish listening to this teaching, listen to the next one, or after I complete the preliminary practices, which sutra I will recite. Making such plans is still necessary. But worldly or non-Dharma matters are unnecessary. Sometimes I think to myself, this month I will stay at home and not go anywhere. But in the end, I can't stay. Either my health fails or I end up going out. Suddenly, an unexpected circumstance arises, and the unpredictable swirling winds of karma gently blow me outside. Sometimes I think, next month I should go out. I must take care of such and such matters. I've made detailed plans in my mind, but in the end I can't go. For many of us, future events do not always correspond exactly to our desires. Therefore, there's no need to overthink things. Just go with the flow. We'll see then. Some Dharma friends say this. Maybe that's better. Let's just talk about it when the time comes. Please don't talk about things that are 2 months from now. We really can't decide them at this moment. 2 years from now, that's more out of the question. Some people even say, in 5 years, I want to become such and such. A lay practitioner told me, in 10 years, I am determined to become ordained under you. 10 years from now? That's not even worth mentioning. Even whether you can decide in 10 months is really hard to say, but some people just really don't understand. In 10 years, I am determined to become ordained under you. By that time, You might have turned to ashes, and I might have turned to ashes too. It's really hard to say. This shows countless deluded thoughts about past and future are endlessly complicated. There is never a time truly reliable. This is indeed a very profound teaching. Many things we've thought about the past are not really trustworthy. And as for all the things in the future, we keep making plans for them now, especially when practicing Dharma or listening to teachings. If you keep thinking like this, it will have an impact. Some people worry for next year, and today many thoughts pop up. At night, they can't sleep or during the day. Many situations, some people think about things, but these are causes for the mind to become scattered. So we must do our utmost to carefully eliminate and dispel them. We should listen to the Dharma with awareness, mindfulness, and diligence without any carelessness. You must look at your mind. If it is distracted outwardly, you must use mindfulness, awareness, and diligence as sentinels right from the start. Turn your mind toward virtuous Dharma so you can listen to the teachings according to the Dharma. These are indeed very profound key points for listening to the Dharma. They are very important. If you don't understand these, on the surface, it seems you are among those listening to the teachings, but in reality, you gain nothing of the Dharma's meaning. Many ordinary people often have this problem. Therefore, once we fully and clearly understand these key points, it's like having a manual for a device. Once you read it carefully, you can use it properly. It's the same when we listen to the Dharma. At the start, rules on listening Dharma are important. Whether it's about your motivation, your behavior, or making adjustments, this is important. Once you make these adjustments, the teachings given can all be integrated into your own continuum. So in this regard, everyone must pay close attention. We'll stop here today.
Om